Hello, it's something of a busman's holiday. It's me talking about books again. I'm talking about this one. I'm going to hold it there for the thumbnail. Do a little smile. It's called The Crystal Bucephalus and it's by Craig Hinton. Now, this seems to have taken me ages. I don't know if that's just a marker of how busy life is. But yeah, so this is a Fifth Doctor story with Tegan and Turlough and fascinatingly Chameleon. How lovely. And this is Craig Hinton's, I think it's Craig Hinton's first book. Now, I've joshingly said in the last couple of days that I believe Craig Hinton thought this was his first and only book, because what he's decided to do is cram it with every single reference to Doctor Who he can possibly squeeze in. In this book, we get a reference to Ben, hardly the first character that comes to mind of references, Adric, Sarah Kingdom, Katrina. A pre-Dragonfire Ace rocks up for no discernible reason. We get so many alien races made reference to. We get Gordon Lightfoot gave the Doctor a coat. This is just insane. And in amongst all that, we've got a time-travelling restaurant. Nobody's come up with that idea before. In fact, it flabbergasts me that in the reviews that I've just read of this, not a single person happens to mention that a time-travelling restaurant is, well, it's fairly embedded in sci-fi these days and has been for a number of years. But that's fine. Is this a good book? Not really. Is it a fun time? Yeah, it is, if you're a Doctor Who fan. And it's absolutely bonkers. And and the funny thing about it is that it actually plays a lot of tricks that New Who plays. And every time something happened that was New Who-ish, I thought, oh my gosh, had I read this prior to the revival, I'd have thought, well, that's nonsense, we'd never do that. But we do it all the time now. So all these alien races milling around this restaurant, RTD would do that just for the lols. You know what I mean? All these bonkers bits of history thrown in. There's a bit where, spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, just clear off, where the Doctor ends up being thrown somewhere else in time in order to get back to where he needs to get. He has to come up with his own restaurant called the Tempus Fugit that becomes so well renowned that the Crystal Bucephalus, which kind of allows you to visit other restaurants throughout time, it gets so good that the Crystal Bucephalus decides to have like an outpost at his restaurant. That's a really Moffat thing to do. I know what I'll do. I'll just set up my own restaurant that's so good that people want to visit it. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. And it was really good fun. So, I mean, and by the way, it's very wibbly-wobbly time-wimey at the end, and I very much appreciated that. I also have to say, it leads beautifully into the Five Doctors, like in a really smooth way that really sets the Five Doctors up nicely, which I think is really, really cool, and that's grand. I also have to say that Craig Hinton has done a grand job of capturing the voices of Tegan and Turlough and the Doctor. Although sneakily, being the Who fan that I am, I did notice he just basically nicked some lines. So at one point, Turlough says, "Face it, Tegan," which I'm sure is what he says at the end of part 1 of Warriors of the Deep. But still it works, I can hear Turlough say that. Here's the downside. And it's weird, because I've been reading these, on the back of the Whoathon and reflecting back, using them to reflect back on the Doctors that I've already seen. Davison just disappears in this. Like, there are other characters that do Davison's bits, but not be quite as good as the Doctor. So there's a character called Alex, who's a very, very clever man. And there are bits where you just think, this is what the Doctor should be doing at this point. The only reason it's not the Doctor is because if it was the Doctor would sort it, as opposed to Alex, who just nearly sorts it, but then makes it worse, as so often happens in Doctor. That's the dog snoring, by the way. And doesn't that just sum up Davison, sadly? Like, you get these big characters around him, and sometimes not even that big characters, and he just sort of fades away. Twice, Davison just disappears in this book, literally disappears. And even before that, he spends ages sort of standing in the background of rooms, in a very Troutony way, actually, just sort of listening and not saying anything. It's just a bit weird. Which was sad because ultimately, it was interesting to see Chameleon. And it does set up Chameleon quite nicely, why Chameleon doesn't appear against Planet of Fire. That's really well handled, actually. Fair play to Craig Hinton. Clearly knows his who. And he's had a good old time writing this. And I've had a good old time reading it, certainly towards the end. But, my God, some of the bits is like, what? What are you doing here? Why is there a Cyberman in a restaurant? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but fine. Anyway, I'm not doing another one of these for a little while. I'm back at work now, and I've got to read some high-quality young person's fiction to set myself up for the rest of the year. So, and then I probably ought to read great respect to Craig Hinton, a proper book, because, that's my jam. But when I get back to doing reading a book, I'm going to read a Sixth Doctor book that's got Hitler on the front. Why wouldn't you do that? It's got Hitler on the front, for crying out loud. And this was way before Let's Kill Hitler, so I'm intrigued to see how, I don't even know who wrote it, whichever author it is that's written a Sixth Doctor book with Hitler on the front, whoever that author is, how he seamlessly woven Hitler into Eric Soward era Doctor Who. Wow, that's going to be furious fun, isn't it? Anyway, tally-ho, bye-bye.